business coaching is personal coaching in disguise.
Mm.
All business coaching is personal coaching in disguise. But when most people hear personal coaching, there's connotations of woo-woo and what are we going to do, sit on a couch or something like that. But ultimately, what holds most business owners back has more to do with
You're listening to Titans of the Trades. I'm your host, Ryan Englin, author of Hire Better People Faster and creator of the CoreFit Hiring System, a proven process to help growing companies attract and retain only the best. I'm on a mission to revolutionize the perception of the trades and elevate it to new heights. After growing up in a blue-collar family, my passion for making the trades cool again runs deep. If you're a titan in the industry and want to be on my show, stick around until the end and I'll reveal how you can be my next guest. Welcome back to another episode. I am your host, Ryan Englin, and on today's show, I get to interview John Nieuwenburg. He is the founder of W5 Coaching. Don't worry, he'll explain where the name came from shortly. But he has been working with companies over 20 years to help them transform the results they get in their business. And we had a great time today talking about the labor crisis that we're dealing with. How do owners and entrepreneurs transition to that next step? So if you're struggling in your business to get out of it so that you can focus on the things that are most important in your life, you do not want to miss this show. I want to welcome to today's show, John Nieuwenburg, the founder of W5 Coaching. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to dig into some of this. It sounds like we align a lot on our philosophies around recruiting, around business coaching, and even some of the tools that we use are very similar. So I'm excited for you to share some of those with our listeners and really what it is that you're doing in the marketplace right now, working with entrepreneurs. I think you said more than half of your business is with companies that are in the trades. Right after my own heart on that one. I just so passionate about that group of entrepreneurs, and there's so much opportunity to help them with this labor crisis and some of the other challenges that they're going through. So you got started in the enterprise world and then left, over 20 years ago to get into coaching. Tell me about that transition and what really precipitated that.
I was looking, I was in a big corporate job where I felt a bit disenfranchised and wanted to have more agency in my life. And honestly, Ryan, I kind of stumbled into coaching. One day I went to a conference and here was coaching right in front of me. And so I did a little homework on it and discovered it was exactly right. It was calling me at that point in my life. And so that's how I fell into it.
Wow. So you've been a coach for 20 years now. What do you find is one of the best ways to get people to change their thinking, change their mindset? And heck, before we even get into that, why don't you tell us, what is your definition of coaching? And then how do you use some of the tools to get results for your clients?
There's a biblical phrase, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So I'm in the teaching business. I'm not here to tell you what you have to do, need to do, should do. I'm here to help you figure out what's right for you and ultimately get to a place where you walk away feeling like you own the answer. In a nutshell, that's what I think coaching is.
I couldn't agree with you more. Sometimes we need to tell people what to do, but that's usually because they're not taking the time to do the things they need to learn, the things they need to learn.
I gave you a description, which is in its ideal form. It's never as perfect as I'm describing. Sometimes I do have to push back. But in its, abstract form or in its perfect form, it's there to help you figure it out.
So the name of the company is W5 Coaching. And I know this was on purpose. Can you share a little bit about W5, where that came from and how you use that in your practice?
In the early 80s, I learned something called the Socratic method of leadership. So Socrates had it that the best way to help somebody is to help them figure it out for themselves. And that's the essence of what coaching is. And you do that because you help people explore their options and order to do that, you ask them questions. And of course, the 5 core questions all start with the W: who, what, when, where, why. And so that kind of became the foundational story of W5 coaching.
And how do you use that in the work that you do right now?
Well, it's an upfront agreement with your client that that's the core way that we're going to work through. In the beginning, when I work with clients, they usually have what I describe as a burning bush, some immediate crisis, some difficulty that's affecting their lives. But over time, what happens is with the best work I do with clients is I become their kind of advisor or sort of unnamed board member or someone that acts as a counterfoil to whatever it is they might be thinking about.
I love that idea of I call that a partnership. It's not
Yeah.
that they're a client and you're a vendor. It's a partnership. You're in it with them. We look at the stuff that we do over at Core Matters very similarly in that this is a partnership. And sometimes there's going to be good and bad in a partnership, but at the end of the day, we're all aligned to the same results. And that's what we're focused on. I love that you said burning bush. Is God speaking to them through this burning bush? Because as soon as you said that, I was like, I get it. We call it stop the bleeding. So usually they come to us and there is a major crisis that needs to be solved. And they have thrown their arms up in the air and said, I give up. I can't do this. I don't want to do this.
Yeah, that's it. The entrepreneurs, by definition, are persistent. They have high levels of determination. They can put their shoulder to the wheel, and some of them do that 10 years, 15 years, and then there's some crisis, something happens that causes them to think, you know what, I need help. I can't continue to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's when they kind of name it and recognize that something needs to change.
I found that thing is most often not business related as much as it
You
is
know,
personal related.
I'm going to share a secret with you. All business coaching is personal coaching in disguise.
Mm.
All business coaching is personal coaching in disguise. But when most people hear personal coaching, there's sort of connotations of woo woo and, what are we going to do? Sit on a couch or something like that. But ultimately, what holds most business owners back has more to do with mindset or some kind of skill development than it is about some practical thing in their business.
Yeah, I get that too. So let's turn this conversation a little bit to the trade contractors that are out there that are listening right now. And there are a lot of things that are challenging in the industry, but I think the one that gets the most press, the one that people talk about the most, is the labor crisis. And the fact that between 40 and 60% of people in the trades today are retiring in the next decade.
Right.
And the people coming into the trades are not even close to make a dent in overcoming the lack of or the amount of open positions that there will be. And what do you see as an opportunity for these contractors to do when it comes to solving part of this problem?
But they have to think about recruiting in the same way as they think about acquiring new customers. So business owners will think about acquiring new customers and put a lot of effort into that 30, 40, 50% of their time. But they only think about recruiting when it's sort of on the side of their desk. It's a obligation. I need to. Some crisis occurs, somebody quits, and now they're scrambling to try to catch up. I want to tell you a story. In Calgary, I was a store manager of a menswear store in Calgary in the 70s. And during that time, the oil business was booming. Calgary grew from about 100 to 500,000 people. But nobody was moved in Calgary to work in retail. Everybody wanted to get part of the oil boom. And so one of the responsibilities I had was about once a quarter, my boss, the local regional manager, and I were to walk through the mall where I was the store manager of our store. And my job was to point out the 2 best salespeople that weren't yet working for me. And so what I learned is that you have to have a bench and that you're proactively recruiting and seeking your next hire well before you need them. That when that occasion occurs, and it's going to occur, it has to occur every single time. You've got 3, 5, 7 people that you've been having coffee with. You've bumped into them at the warehouse, that you've got relationships with people, so you can make a call and say, hey, we've been talking for 6 months. How you doing?
Love that. We call that building a bench.
Yeah, well,
And
that's what I
just,
call it too. It's the bench. It's like having a
yeah,
backbench or a farm team.
yeah. And it doesn't get built overnight. And I think the big thing, everybody asks me, like, how do I get in front of people, the good people? And I go, where are the good people? And inevitably they tell me, well, they're working for someone else. Okay. If we know they're working for someone else, how do you build relationships with them now so that when that someone else disappoints them and they say, you know what, I can't do this anymore, I got to work somewhere else, they go
Yeah.
somewhere
So
else.
in the 90s, this is before the internet, I had a job that had high visibility. I was in the magazines in the local community I lived in. And as a result, I was findable by recruiters. I'd often get a phone call, and the call would sound like, hey, how you doing? How's the wife? How's the golf game? And then they would say, gee, we've been assigned this job, and we're looking for someone with this set of skills. And it was pretty clear they were talking about me. But here's how it worked. I didn't open the door unless I wanted to, and they would never be accused of poaching. So you need a third party, an agent, someone who can be calling on your behalf, those people working for other people that you'd like to meet, and they won't disclose who you are until that candidate indicates enough interest that they're willing to say, oh, well, we're talking about X, Y, and Z. So
Mm.
if you've got someone doing marketing or you've got someone doing, sales conversion, you also need someone who's out there recruiting for you. They're easy to find, these recruiters. I know some local ones are expensive, but there's lots of recruiters everywhere in the world that can do what I'm describing.
Yeah. Yeah. So if recruiting is marketing, how do we turn that into something practical? How do we do something with that so that we can start getting results besides hiring a recruiter? Because that
Yeah.
might be
So,
too big a first step.
well, first of all, I'd ask you to rethink how you think about job postings. So if you
Mm.
go to Indeed or any of these job posting sites, you'll see a headline that looks like wanted electrician, wanted plumber. There's nothing that sets you apart or distinguishes you. And so the headline ought to be some point of pain, something that your prospect, your candidate is thinking about the reason that they want to quit. Are you working for a crappy boss and looking for a new one? That's a way better headline than, wanted plumber or some version of that. And the other thing about it is lots of them are, kind of just routine descriptions of what a job should look like. What are the 10 reasons I should work for your business? What are 10 good,
Mm.
compelling reasons why? So think about it as a sales ad, not a recruiting or what might be, sort of just a job description kind of post. Those are boring. And if you're recruiting someone, that person can find 20 of them.
I love
The
that
other
you
thing
said that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the other thing is that we tend to get um, not proactive when we do recruiting, and so we might post an ad and start thinking about doing interviews 3 weeks later. Well, I got news for you: the 10 best candidates that you attracted now have jobs already, and you've lost them. You don't, you've never had a chance to interview them. So when you get on the recruiting bandwagon, it ought to become one of your highest priorities during the time that you're actually thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things that you said. One is that I stand up in front of audiences. I ask people, how many people can finish this sentence? People don't leave jobs, they leave people. And everybody agrees with that sentence. But then when I see their job ads, it's all about the job.
Yeah,
Well, if we know that the reason people are looking for a job is because they're looking for new people, the ad should be about the people. The top 10
exactly.
reasons you need to come work here. And it's not because you get to swing the same hammer or turn the same wrench you did somewhere else. There's so
Yeah,
much more to it.
yeah. What are the lifestyle reasons why would I consider your place to be a desirable workplace? Those are the things that you should be talking about, not
Yeah,
the
in the
terms and
service world,
conditions.
it's always the on-call phone, right? That in the service world is how much am I going to have the on-call phone and have to tell my wife that I might be out all night, right? Like that's a big deal for them.
Sure, of course.
And then they'll always be recruiting in that mindset of treating it like a customer. I've asked teams, I go, how long would you let your sales team sit on a new lead without contacting them before you yell at them? And inevitably, it's like 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 seconds. So why do you think it's okay to sit on a hot candidate for 3 weeks because you're too busy?
It's perverse, right? I mean, on the face of it, it's incredible that people do that. And yes, that's what's wrong with your business, that you don't treat recruiting with the same level of respect or urgency as you do with acquiring good customers.
So you talk about the difference between transactional and transformational coaching. And
Right.
I don't want to steal the thunder, so I want you to share, what do you mean by that? And are the things we're talking about right now, are they transactional or are they transformational?
Transformation is that you look at life with an entirely different lens. I'll give you an example of transformational. If I could sum it up in a short phrase, you don't get the culture you want, you get the culture you deserve. You don't get the
Mm,
culture you want, you get the culture you deserve. So, what would you need to do? What would you have to have in place so that you would have the culture you want? Let's explore that question. What are the specific things that you could be doing so you'd wake up one day? Or the other way that I sometimes ask that question is, I'll ask a business owner, how many people have you got working for you? Well, I got 20. Well, that's great. So let me ask you, if you could start your business again today from scratch, how many of the 20 would you rehire? Do you know what the most
mm.
common answer to that is? About
What's that?
50%. 50%. And so are you
Wow.
telling me that the bottom half of your team are pissing off the top half? Is that the culture you want to have? Or the bottom half of your team are pissing off your customers most of the time? What are you doing about it? You're just living with it, aren't you? You're just tolerating it. Well, no wonder it's the
Yeah.
culture you deserve.
Yeah. We just had a client we were talking about. They have this one foreman that is so toxic they can't actually build a crew around him. But
Mm,
he's so good and he keeps the job. I mean, as much as he can get done with just himself and maybe one other guy. But they keep him. They keep him. They
yeah,
tolerate that. And
that's a bad decision. People don't get fired for skills; they get fired for attitude. And that
mm,
worker, as good as he is at his skills, is costing you more than than the value he's creating for you. But that's a difficult, bitter pill to swallow in the short term because it's going to cause disruption. In the long term, you're going to be better off for it. What would you like to deal with? His
I,
disruption
I've
all
never
around?
met I've never met someone that said, "Gee, we fired that person too soon." I've never heard that.
No. And so another phrase I like to use is, the minute you make up your mind that you need to fire someone and actually pulling the trigger is a bucket. And that bucket is filled with your money.
Mm.
How long do you want this to take? How big a bucket will you need before you actually pull the trigger and do what you know needs doing? The other
That's
way
got to
that,
hurt when you think about that.
yeah, it does. The other thing that that's kind of related to this, Ryan, is that I don't know about your experience, but my experience is that about 50% of the time a new hire works out. And that used to bother me a lot. I thought, oh my gosh, how come it? And then I discovered it was about average. And how that affects the workplace is, has this ever happened to you, a business owner? So you hire someone and 6 weeks into it, your stomach hurts every time you think about that person. And you think to yourself, I don't know if this is working. I don't know if this is working. And you kind of tolerate it. And 6 months later, you're still living with this. Well,
Mm.
here's the deal. You ought to know within 3, 4, 5 weeks whether someone's going to be working out or not. But because you stop recruiting, you tolerate the bad decision you made. Whereas if you'd kept recruiting, you'd be in a position where 3, 4, 5 weeks, you'd say, it's not working out. Here, let's just part company. And you got 3 people lined up to step into that role. So here's the thing, you want leverage. Whoever's got the most options has the most leverage. And the perverse truth of it is that your new hire has more options than you do if you stop recruiting. And what do I mean by that? Well, if they quit, you're hooped. They have options. They get to say, I'm gone. How do you create options for yourself? Well, you need 3, 4, 5 other candidates, and you want them all the time. And then you'll be much more equipped and much more likely to do the right thing. Fire that guy.
Yeah. I've read that studies have shown that it takes the average candidate 10 weeks to find a new job. And so I've done some digging into that. So if they leave you in less than 10 weeks, they never stopped looking. So why should you? Why should you?
Exactly.
But we do, because I think it's what you said. Recruiting is this thing that we have to do when we have to do it. We resist. And so once we hire someone, we're like, whew, that is over and done with.
Exactly. And that's the wrong way to think about it. You want to recognize that all I've done is agree to take someone for a test drive. And if this works out, great. But I'm prepared for if a test drive doesn't work out because I've got other possibilities.
Now, you've talked about building a self-managing business. Tell me a little bit about that, and what does that mean, and how do we do that?
Well, what that means is ultimately the goal for a business owner is to have time and money freedom. And what that means is that you have the money to do as you wish and the freedom to do what you want. And that could be because you want to sell the business. It could be because you want to start a different business, or it could be because you want to be on the beach. The point is you can. But lots of business owners never get to a place for lots of different reasons where the business runs smoothly without their day-to-day involvement. Or put a different way, if you're thinking about selling your business, then let me give you an acid test. What would happen to your business if you are not available under any circumstance for 3 months? What would be left of the business? And if the answer to that is you'd be afraid to find out, well, then your business relies on you far too much for its success. And that business isn't worth very much in a resale market.
Yeah.
And here's why that matters, Ryan. If we talk about a business worth doing $1 million in profit, and let's say that business would sell for 5 times its EBITDA, 5 times its profit. So the business enterprise value is about $5 million. So it's doing about $1 million in profit. And let's say we work real hard. A year later, we've added 10% to the profit. Now we did $1.1 million. Well, that's pretty good. That's a good outcome. But what happened if we actually focused on the things it took to raise the enterprise value? Well, instead of that business now being worth 5 million, it's now worth 5.5 million, 5 times the value or 5 times the growth that we did on focusing on profit. So we get so focused on profit, we forget about enterprise value. And they're not mutually exclusive, but typically we're so focused on one that we don't think about the other and don't strategically, proactively do the things that makes the business valuable to a third party, to a buyer.
So if I'm the owner and I have that thought of 3 months and I'm like, you know what, maybe, but probably not, like it doesn't freak me out, but what does that do to the multiple? What does that do to the enterprise value if I'm still required to be in the business? If I don't know without a shadow of a doubt that I could step away and the business would be fine, what does that do to my valuation?
So a buyer thinks about valuation with 2 conditions, growth and risk. So how much can this business grow and how risky is this business? And so at the very least, what's going to happen is you, the seller, are going to have to accept an earnout. And what that means is that some portion of the value of that the buyer is willing to give you is going to be put at risk. So in our hypothetical example, it's $5 million. They may give you $3 or $4 million up front, but the last million is at risk, and you've got to work through a year or 2 or 3, hit some numbers, hit some metrics before the final million is paid out. And here's the thing about that: you're not the boss anymore. You have a boss, and they're telling you how much your marketing is going to be or how much is available for this or that. And you got into business because you didn't want to have a boss.
Yeah.
And now you're putting it at risk. So
my stomach turned just thinking about that.
Well, exactly. So if you want to avoid that risk, your business, well, let me, think of it a different way. What is the average time, or how much commitment does it take the owner of a McDonald's? How much do they need to be in the restaurant? as little as they want, because
Wow.
they have a general manager and team leaders. They've got systems in place that the owner is an investor, not an operator. And so that might be another way for you to be thinking about as a business owner. How about if I become an investor in this business instead of its owner or its operator?
One of the things when we do some organizational design for our clients is we always put on the owner or the shareholder box above the
Mm.
CEO. And I get so much pushback for that. And they're like, why does that need to be on my org chart? Because you need to start thinking about the person that's sitting in that box and creating value for them. And for the
Yeah,
owner, it's you. It's the owner
yeah,
is in that box. And so,
yeah.
how do you, as a COO, CEO, as a team, create value for them? And notice that their responsibilities is to just increase the value of the company, like just to make sure they get a return on their investment. That's it. They're not involved in day to day. That's how you think
They,
like a buyer in that sense.
yeah, it very much is. That's often the thing we talked about mindset or uh, overcoming personal coaching. Well, most business owners don't recognize that they have a arm's length entity with their name on it. And that
Mm.
entity is when you're in the shareholders box. Most business owners conflate their identity with the business identity. In fact, there's lots and lots of stories of owners who sell a business and then have significant depression for 2 years after they've sold the business. Why? Well, without that business, who am I?
Yeah.
I used to be
Do you
Bob the
do that
electrician.
coaching?
Yeah, of course. That's part
Okay.
of how you start thinking about. And what we know, the most successful exits are when the business is ready to be sold and when the business owner is going to something. In other words, they're excited about the next phase. They've
Yeah.
got a name for it. They can identify it, and they're excited about moving into that because that becomes their new identity. That
Mm.
becomes who they are.
And you do that work with your partners, the companies that you partner with, and you help them when they do transition to have that next thing, that next target.
Yeah, so that's typically a very mature coaching relationship. In the early days of coaching, it's because they can't hire or they're working 70 hours a week. And so lots of times that's about the furthest thing from their mind. But it is something that over the time we work together, we evolve into thinking about. Um, let's talk about this entity known as your business and your relationship with that business.
I've noticed that when you hear my story, I do what I do because of watching my dad being an owner operator and how many hours and everything else. And he never really solved the problem. And he's only partially retired right now. He still goes into the office
Mm,
probably almost every day of the week for a few hours and everything else. And he shouldn't be working anymore, but he can't
yeah,
let go. And when we've talked about it, he shares the stats about how many entrepreneurs pass away or get
mm,
super depressed once they don't have that identity anymore. And so it's a
yeah,
real thing. And mental health is something I'm really passionate about. I'm not an expert at it, don't want to be an expert at it because there are people out there who do it so much better, but it is something that really tugs on my heart and makes me think,
mm,
especially in the trades, we have this problem. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people talking about where to go to get help with it. So that's why I just wanted to make sure that, if that's something you help with, uh,
Ryan,
I get it'd
there's
be a more mature relationship, but definitely something to think
something
about.
I'll share with you that might be related to this. Is in 2015, I did a TEDx talk, and what I talked about is my experience of attempting suicide in 2011. So I'm very familiar with and have some personal experience with mental health and depression and how we're judged by those things. Um, and for a lot of the business owners I work with, that's the space that we get to and helping them work through how to be better with themselves.
All right, John. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom and just your years of experience in doing this with so many entrepreneurs. If someone's interested in wanting to know more about any of the things we've talked about, how do they get a hold of you? And then you actually have a special offer for our listeners as well.
I'm very easy to find, w5coaching.com. I'll make it even easier. Just go to timewithjohn.com. Timewithjohn.com. That'll take it to my calendar. We'll book a 15-minute call. get to know each other a little bit. And if it makes sense, we'd be happy to set up a complimentary coaching session to talk about whatever's going on in the business and maybe help you out a bit.
Thank you so much for that amazing offer, John. And for those of you listening right now, really take to heart some of the stuff we talked about today because it's real. I see it all the time. I know John sees it all the time. And these problems that you're dealing with, that you're tolerating, can be solved. Sometimes you just need an outside perspective to give you a different way of thinking about it, and that transformational coaching that we talked about. Thanks again, John, for being on the show. I've really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Ryan Englin here. Thank you so much for listening to Titans of the Trades. If you're a titan in the construction, manufacturing, or skilled trades industry and would like to be a guest on my show, please visit podcast.corematters.com. If you found value in this interview, would you share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot on your phone and share it with a friend or post it on social. And if you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Titans of the Trades. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, click the subscribe button. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and get me one step closer to solving the labor crisis facing the industry. Want to know more about how we're doing that? Go to our website or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.